it was an act of terrorism and Hamas are terrorists. That's your position.
I think the Hamas fighters who went into Israel and killed civilians and kidnapped babies, certainly I would call them terrorists, just as I call Israeli soldiers who kidnap children and kill children terrorists. I use the terrorist label more freely because otherwise it's just a politicized, empty phrase that we just apply to our enemies. What I would say, Piers, is that I find it a problem, and you know this, you've joked about all the memes about you, this obsession with what we call Hamas, which is a question you pose. Let's be honest, Piers, to most of your pro-Palestinian brown guests. You don't ask your Israeli or Jewish or pro-Israeli guests to condemn Israeli terrorism or Israeli war crimes at the start of an interview in the way you do.
Well, no, I've been asked directly whether I think Israel are terrorists, and I've said no. I don't think they are. I think they had a right to defend themselves. The question is the scale.
That wasn't the point I made, Piers.
That
wasn't the point I made. I said when you have Israeli guests on. Let me finish my sentence.
No, Mehdi, it's not your show. It's mine. I wanted to say that, or the whole interview, by the way. So we got that out of the way. It's a joke. I'm joking. But the point I would make is, I think that I asked all the pro-Palestinian guests who've come on that question quite quickly, because I think it reveals a state of mind. If, like you, and I'm sorry, I didn't realise you had in that first piece on MSNBC done that. So I take back the suggestion you hadn't. And I'm glad that you have called them that. I don't think you can call them anything else. So the moment you have a pro-Palestinian guest who wants to avoid calling what Hamas did an act of terrorism by terrorists, I think it's very revealing about their mindset. And I think it's the wrong mindset.
Here's my problem with that. Why is that not applied to your Israeli guests? I would be fine, Piers, if you had Palestinian guests and you begin by asking them, do you condemn Hamas war crimes? Because what Hamas did on October 7th was a war crime. But then you should start with Israeli guests and pro-Israeli guests saying, do you condemn Israeli war crimes, which have been documented by the UN, every human rights group on the planet? You don't. You had Naftali Bennett, the former Israeli prime minister, on a couple of weeks ago. I watched the interview. Your opening question was, how comfortable are you with the way Israel's prosecuting the war? Right. Bit of a softball to start with. You didn't ask him to condemn Israeli terrorism, Israeli war crimes, Israeli genocide in Gaza. So a lot of people look at that and they say, they get your intention, but it comes across as a bit of a racist double standard.
So smooth, so in control, always very effective when you've got the receipts as well. He's looked at an interview he's done 2 weeks earlier with Naftali Bennett. It says, you asked a much more soft question than you do when you're talking to a pro-Palestinian, usually a pro-Palestinian brown guest, right? That's how you can bring in that racist double standard charge. There's an interesting answer from Piers Morgan, because he essentially says, well, the reason I ask pro-Palestinian people if Hamas are terrorists and I don't ask pro-Israeli people if Israel are terrorists is because I don't think Israel are committing terrorism. So sort of, I only dispute people when I personally disagree with them. Mehdi Hassan also sort of opened up the possibilities there, because even if he doesn't think that Israel are terrorists, why doesn't he push those Israelis on war crimes? Right? If you don't want to say, do you condemn this act of terrorism, why don't you say, do you condemn this war crime that Israel have so clearly committed?